Purdue trying to minimize enrollment surprises in wake of another applications record. If you're at all a regular watcher of the show, if you're a Purdue connected person, if you're a staff member or faculty member, if you're thinking about moving here because of Purdue, if you're a student, a parent of a student, heck, if you just live in the area, it was really, really hard to miss the disaster that Purdue housing has been over the last school year. And it's still ongoing, because the disaster is that they are figuring out their reservations for the next school year. And there were not enough beds to go around. They had a much higher acceptance rate on their admitted students. They get X number of applications. They admit Y number of students, betting on Z number of students accepting those applications. Well, last year when they solved for Z turned out to not be correct. And so moving on through the variables, they actually accepted a number of students actually accepted it, and it was way more than they had. And all of this tags back to, I think, two big facts. And I do believe that they are both true to some extent, to a lot of extent, really. One, Purdue has held the line on tuition for more than a decade at this point. From a parent's standpoint who would have to pay tuition, that's an absolutely fantastic standpoint. From a student's perspective who might be on the hook for paying their tuition themselves if their parents aren't paying, that is, of course, a fantastic. However, it has two consequences. I was going to say unintended consequences, but I think one of them is intended. One of them maybe not so much. How do you hold the line on tuition? Well, you have to control costs elsewhere and increase revenue elsewhere. And they've done a good job on controlling costs, but some will say to the detriment of many programs and students and faculty and staff that they have now cut too thin. So that is kind of the law of unintended consequences. We can debate who started this hold on rising of tuition, if they intended that or not, but that's neither here nor there for this conversation. It's a fact at this point that chaff has been blown away. They've been at this for 11 years. There's 11 or 12 years. There's not a lot of fluff or waste that will survive that long when it's cut. But the law of unintended consequences, I think, also means that holding the line of tuition for so long and being something that you market yourself on means that people see that as a value. And then that increases the attractiveness of Purdue University, which is, of course, one of the points. But then you get too many people that want to be here. And when you're taking a gamble on, if I send this many acceptance letters knowing that only a percentage of them are actually going to choose to come here, and you get that wrong, that there is the law of unintended consequences. The early action deadline was November 1st, and early action results were released January 15th. And President Mung Chiang said that we had another record year by a long stretch, frankly. What he said. The other part that ties into this, though, is also the quality of a Purdue education. So I did talk about the fact that maybe some things are suffering after more than a decade of holding the line on tuition and having to cut away to make that happen. But there is no doubt that a Purdue degree is valuable and continues to be valuable. I'm not saying that it's not, and that's another factor that's drawing in more applications and more students who choose to be here. But more importantly, who are qualified to be here. They meet the academic rigorous standards that it takes to be at Purdue University. Here's the next quote. It's a reflection of this non-stoppable and frankly accelerating scale of demand for education at Purdue across different degrees. And I will give him the president inherited situation set up. And of course, he wants to maintain it. There is a certain PR part about this. There are metrics that he has to meet in order to get his full compensation package. 14.7% increase in early figures over the same period from last. And they're expecting I think, similar or more in the regular application pool. The president, though, has said that Purdue University, he's speaking for Purdue University, that the president of Purdue is saying that Purdue University has to figure out how to get a handle on this, because the university, and most importantly, perhaps from my perspective, the university and the city are not built to handle amount of students. And I think that is a rather honest and frank acknowledgement of a situation. We have a vibrant city here in West Lafayette and Lafayette. I often describe Lafayette as it straddles this line. It's either a small city or a big town. And depending on what particular thing that you're examining, it can go either way. Yes, we do have some high rises, 8, 10 stories, that sort of thing. We're not in a Chicago or an LA. We're not in Indianapolis. We're Lafayette. And West Lafayette is even smaller than that. And the city just doesn't have the infrastructure to expand at those rates. And the town doesn't have the infrastructure to continue to expand residential housing at that rate. The university, aside from that. So what's going to come next year? Well, the university is going to have to figure out how it is that they're going to maintain a growth level that's sustainable. And by sustainable growth level, I think in the short term, that might be just holding the line and not growing and letting some development catch up to the demand for Purdue University. Will we wind up in the coming year where they have been in the last year, where they wind up going and amending students' housing contracts and shoving 4 people into a space that was meant for 2 people? Will they have a lottery system whereby some students don't get housing at all and are left to fend for themselves out there? One would sure hope not. But what's going to play out in the real world? I don't know. I'm here for the ride, and I will let you all know as we find out more. Let me know what you think about Purdue's situation here in the Greater Lafayette area. Drop a comment in the chat. Let me know what you guys think. And if you're watching this later, leave a comment in the comments below.